Let's go.
AOSD chapter. AOSD. Watch me bring it out. Similar sound out. AOSD. Watch me bring it down. You know the script, So what they saying, you are a witch. Now you're playing. I'm playing. We are playing scripts. You want to man. I'm powering up a higher. I'm a super saiyan. I do it solo. Get a whole doctor with three more. From the Christians to the Hebrews, they're all lost like evil. I didn't give them a shot like a free throw. Break it all down like a peephole. Just know from the lesson that an eye is a lesson to the spirit. The kingdom is a keyhole. Oh no. I know it's been fulfilled in all know. The kingdom is here on my soul. Underneath we might know. Combine with me, just do covenant living. The kingdom within, loving all of God's children. Watch me break through. Brain works on good fruits. Hebrew literature, rip doctors like saber tooth. I'm the land, loose from past over to the piece of loose from all of us from head to toe to the new creation. Everybody is new. A similar sound operate.
Let's go. Let's go. Testing. Now let me find out how to turn this down. There we go. Sorry about that. Let me try to get this out the way. Okay. Hopefully that'll be able to work. All right. We're going to try this again. Now I had to go through my personal phone. You know I like showing my scripture on the screen, but I guess I'm not going to be able tonight. So let me check the volume. Okay, the volume seems to be okay. All right, what I'm going to be doing tonight, I'm going to be going through the first century's understanding of the Jews that they had about the Messiah. Because, you know, you have a lot of people today thinking that the Messiah never existed, call a lot of things first century this and that. Let me try to move this over just a tad bit. Sorry about that. Now, hopefully I don't keep dropping frame rates now, you know, hopefully not, but we will see. I can see now that I'm still stopping a little bit, but hopefully not as much now. Anyway, my YouTube channel, AOSD, it stands for the Assembly of Sound Doctrine, and my last name, Chandler, Chandler. So you could go on the YouTube search bar, search AOSD, Chandler. Please, y'all, share the video. Like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. My resources today, I'm going to be using the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, this will be my first time cracking this bad boy open. This is full of Hebrew literature from the 1st and 2nd century BCE era. I'm going to be also going into my 12 Patriarchs, as well as the Bible and my Josephus. You can tell it has been beat up. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to expound on the understanding that the Jews had of the Messiah in the first century, because, you know, you got people telling you we're in the end days right now, right? Perilous times has come, is coming, have came, have arrived, and we got the coronavirus, the mark of the beast. We're in the last days, and etc. Christ is going to come any minute now, and on this shiny white horse, and he's going to deliver us, because they have missed the whole point of the gospel. So what I'm going to do today, my goal is to show people the hope, the true hope of Israel. And we're in first century Israel, as well as the earlier BCE Israel, the hope that they had. And if our hope is different from their hope, or our understanding is different from their understanding, then either we're off or they're off. And I like to say, since it was written for them, that we will be the ones that's off and actually not them. So I'm just going to try to see if I can convey some knowledge and impart it upon you all, some wisdom that maybe you guys haven't had, and etc. And maybe you could take this information to whomever that's in your circle and y'all expound on it. And if y'all have any questions, you can hit me back. All right. So what I'm going to go through the commentary of Habakkuk. So, which a lot of people don't understand or they don't know is that the Jews in the Qumran community, they actually left literature, and the literature that they left is their thoughts, their ideals on the Messiah, as well as their community, as well as their fellow brethren and sisters inside of the community. They also left something called a pesher, Pesher. So it's no need for us to get into all of that and trying to find out what it is when I can tell you in layman term what it means. It just means a commentary. So that is true. If you guys did not know, the Jews left plenty commentary on their own scriptures. So we don't have to come through with 3,000 years, 2,000 years in their future, another 1,000 years in our future, trying to understand what these things meant, because we have the explanation left by the Jews. So we have the prophets, and the prophets said thing. The prophet said the information, and then later on, you have the Jews expound on the information that the prophets left. So now all of the guesswork has been taken from us. We don't have to guess. We don't have to make it up. The Jews told us what they meant. So let's see what the Israelites said some of these things mean. So we're going to go through the book of Habakkuk today. Okay, let's go through Habakkuk. And when going through Habakkuk, there's some very interesting things. The first thing to know about Habakkuk is that once you read Habakkuk 2 and 3, it says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie." So Habakkuk had some end days prophecies about the time of the end. According to futurists, that time that Habakkuk is speaking on is about today's time, 2021, maybe 2022, 2023, according to the futurists out there. So now let's see how the Israelites that lived in the BC, before Christ era, let's see how they view Habakkuk. So now, this is on page 80 of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the commentary on Habakkuk. Now, I'm just going to read the paragraph before it starts, just in case you guys can see. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm just going to read thoroughly what it says, right? It says, "The commentary of Habakkuk was among the first catch of scrolls from Cave 1 and has itself been the subject of several commentaries. The first step in understanding the commentary is to understand the background of the original book." We should do that about for any knowledge that we learn, period. Habakkuk delivered his prophecy in the 6th century BCE. 6th century BCE, before Christ. His native Judah was then threatened by two forces, the Chaldeans or Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, who were then in the process of conquering the small kingdoms of the Near East and eternal religion strife between the pious worshippers of the Lord and the ungodly. The main thrust of the biblical book is to ask where God is in the midst of this misery and whether there is a divine plan. I'm going to read the next one, and then I'm going to start going actually into the writings. The Qumran writer uses the biblical book as a pattern to understand his own times, which would be like the 1st century BCE. As in the biblical book, Israel is again threatened by a foreign power. Not the Chaldeans this time, but a group called the Kittim, or Westerners, in the opinion of most scholars today, the Romans, which the killings would be the Romans, and I'm going to prove that. And again, Israel is suffering from eternal strife between the wicked and the pious, exemplified by the conflict between the teacher of the righteousness, which will be Christ, and his opponents, the man of the lie, and the wicked priest. So first of all, it's you got to understand the priest played an important role on eschatology, dealing with the end days in Christ, right? So the wicked priest is there. The Israelites they brought up the wicked priest. So when you get to the book of Revelation, you better believe one of those symbolic beasts would represent the wicked priest. I know you guys wanted to be maybe what, Russia or China or somebody else. But no, first century wicked priests. Now listen, all the statements in the first two chapters of Habakkuk are made to reference to these circumstances. The third chapter consists of a hymn or praise and not included in the commentary. I might was read the last paragraph, might well. The modern attempt to decode the Qumran recoding of Habakkuk has centered on the identification of the Kittim. As noted, most now agree that the Kittim are the Romans and their arrival in Israel, so dreaded by the writer of the commentary, in fact, took place in 63 BCE. The commentary must have been written around that time, and the latest carbon-14 tests, in fact, point to the first century BCE as the period when K1 copy was made. The paleographical date places the scroll late in the first century BCE, that the priest, and the man of the lie also belong to this period is still disputed. All right, so now, this is what it says. The first portion of the commentary focuses on strife. Unfortunately, the first column survives only in fragments. So I'm going to read the first column of what the audience of the Qumran community left, those Israelites, about things pertaining to the last days. Now, it's up to you to find out if you think these things that I'm finna read pertaining to the last days is about us today in the 21st century, 2021, or was it about what we teach as fuller preterists, first century, dealing with Christ and the disciples? So it's up to you to determine. Column 1. The oracle that the prophet Habakkuk saw, how long have I cried out, and you do not hear? I cry out in justice, and you do not liberate us. So that's Habakkuk 1, 1 and 2. It says the burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. Burden is kind of like not dreadful per se, but like in a hurry. Something like in a hurry. Anyway. Now, this is how the ancient Israelites did it. They said a line and then they tried to explain it. This refers to the entreaty of the generation. Dot, dot, dot. So it's stuff missing. The events to come upon them, dot, dot, dot. They cried out for, dot, dot, dot. So you could tell it's in fragments. Why do you let me see such wickedness? Why do you behold such turmoil? So it's just going through the verses. This refers to, dot, 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 who rejected the law of God with tyranny and treason. Robbery and injustice are in front of me. Strife and conflict continue. This refers to blah, 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 injustice and strife, blah, 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 contention, and blah, blah, is. Now, I know you guys like, this ain't even making sense because it's too many blocks. It ain't even a direct sentence. Not no direct idea could be formulated from what survived in the text. But trust me, it's going to get better in just a second. Therefore, law declines, and true judgment never comes forth. This means that they rejected God's law, which would be the law that Moses brought. For the wicked man hems in the righteous man. The wicked man refers to the wicked priest, and the righteous man is the teacher of righteousness. So now, let me see what I don't know where part that is in Habakkuk. Let's see, 1:4. Therefore the law is slack, and judgment do not go forth. For the wicked, that will be the wicked priest, does compass about the righteous, that will be the teacher of righteousness, Christ. Therefore wrong judgment proceeded. All right, so now, therefore comes out perverted. This means that blah, 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 not blah, blah. Okay, so now, we didn't made it to that point, a bunch of blah, blah, blocks, right? We don't understand what's going on. What can we get with this information? What can we bring out with so many dots and incomplete thoughts? Well, let's continue. It says, now, the following passage expresses something about the writer's view on Israel history. He believes that traitors to God's law trouble the nation at crucial times. The present, those who believe in the teacher. The past, the unfaithful of the time of Israel's return from exile. The new covenant, and the future, those who disbelieve in the anointed priest, the Messiah of Aaron. So now, let me see how my volume sounds. Okay, sounds pretty good. Okay. So now, look, it says, look, traitors, and see, and be shocked and amazed, for the Lord is doing something in your time that you will not believe if it is told. So now, this is bringing something to those individuals that's doing wicked, saying you guys need to look, for the Lord is doing something in your time that you will not believe if it is told. This is sort of like Isaiah, who will believe our report. But once again, we're trying to see if this is matching the time period that we live in 21st century, 2021, or is this matching toward the first century as us full of preterists teach. So now, let's listen. This passage refers to the traitors with the man of the lie, because they have not obeyed the words of the teacher of righteousness from the mouth of God. So now this is saying the man of the lie have not obeyed the teacher of righteousness. Now the teacher of righteousness is the Christ. So whatever's going on is going in the time period of these Christs or some of the teachings of the Christ, the teacher of righteousness. Sorry about that. Let's try to get more centered. Okay. So now, okay, that's why I had it like that. So now, let's continue to go. Let's continue to go. I might have to move up just a little bit. Let's see, hopefully that makes. So now, it says, it also refers to the traitors to the new covenant, because they did not believe in God's covenant and desecrated his holy name. And finally, it refers to the traitors in the last days. So now we have finally arrived at the point. The traitors in the last days. So now, according to some of the Christian pastors today, as well as some of y'all eschatology, the last days are today, right now, that we're living in. So if that is correct, Habakkuk, it's going to address us right now. So let's see if it addresses us right now. His holy name, and it finally refers to the traitors in the last days. They are the cruel Israelites who will not believe when they hear everything that is to come upon the latter generation that will be spoken by the priest, in whose heart God has put the ability to explain all the words of his servants, the prophets, through whom God has foretold everything that is to come upon his people and the Gentiles. So now, this is what the commentary of Habakkuk did by the Israelites, the ancient Israelites. They put the last days and the time period when the cruel Israelites did not believe the words that was spoken to them about what was to befall them and the latter generation that was spoken of by the priest, in whose heart God put the ability to explain all words. So these wicked, cruel Israelites will not believe the things spoken of in the latter generation. So now, let's venture off in the Bible real fast, right? Let me give you an example of what this looks like. When I go to Matthew Don't forget now, these Israelites, these ain't Christians. This is the BC era. Christians didn't come into first century AD. So this is hundreds of years before that. So you can't blame Christianity for that. You can't blame the Romans or how you guys want to do it. These are Israelites. So now, that was a prophecy that, or understanding that Israel had. So let's see if we can find something like that. I go to Matthew chapter 3. In those days came John the Baptist preaching in the wilderness of Judea and saying, repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. This happened first century, right? Let's look at his message. Verse 7, but when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees come to his baptism, he said unto them, O generation of vipers, who had warned you to flee from the wrath to come, but bring forth fruits meet for repentance. So John the Baptist spoke to the Israelites in his days, calling them a generation of vipers, and asked who has warned them to flee from wrath that was finna come upon them. Okay, so that might be one. But now we got the great priest, which we know Christ would have been the great priest after the order of Melchizedek. Let's look at Christ's message. Matthew 23. Listen what Christ said. Verse 29. Woe unto you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, the same generation and people that John the Baptist spoke to. Behold, ye build a tomb of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous. And say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves, that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up the measure of your fathers. Ye serpents, ye generations of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? So now you got Christ giving the Pharisees and the scribes the same message that John the Baptist gave the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Same message. And now listen what he said. Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you should kill and crucify, and some of them you should scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel and to the blood of Zachariah, son of Berechias, who you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things should come upon this generation. So Christ put everything that was named upon his generation, right? So now let me try to give you something real quick. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. So let's see if I can
AOSD.
let me play that real fast.
AOSD. Watch me bring it out. Listen to this song, AOSD.
And just like that, I'm back. So now notice Christ said upon this generation, correct? Let me see. Let me. All right, there we go. I'm caught back up. Christ said, "Upon this generation, all these things should come." And I know you guys want to. Some of you guys will be like, "Hey, this generation is talking about the 21st century generation, what we live in 2021. All these things are going to come upon this generation living August. Let me see. What's today's date? August 22nd, 2021. All the things are going to come upon this generation that we live in right now. Well, I got something called Philo, Alexandrian Jew, right? So these Jews actually explain certain things of their old ancient understanding. And woe and behold, Philo lived around, was it 20 BCE to 50 ADE? So he lived around the time that the Dead Sea Scrolls was actually created or was being written down. So let's see what he said dealing with I think it's the life of Moses. Now, I'm trying to remember. So, if I did not underline it or highlight it, it might take me time to get to it. Which, hopefully, I did. Give me one sec. Which I don't see any highlighting. Yep, I did highlight it. Smart me. Thank you. I have it highlighted right there if you guys can see it. Right there. That's the highlights. Just in case you think I'm going to make up some words. So this is what it says. This is when they came out of Egypt. It's called The Life of Moses. The first one, page 481, 60. It's like section 63, verse 237, 238, line 238. It says, accordingly, for 8 and 30 years more after the 2 years, which I have already mentioned as having elapsed, so that's 40 years. 38 plus 2 is 40. Elapsed. The life of a complete generation of mankind did they wander up and down, travailing the pathless wilderness. Right here. You have it right there. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. I don't know if my phone's going to focus in or not. I don't know if you guys can see it. But right there, we have a Jew, an Alexandrian Jew. Don't hate on the man because he's from Alexander, Egypt. That's what at that time that was like the educational capital of the world. In fact, they had the biggest documents and manuscripts left over by different nations at that point in time. It's a reason why people don't like books. So much information is in books today. And it's the reason why a lot of intelligent people read, because a lot of information is in books. And reading books open a different portion of your mind. Just a tidbit. Sorry, y'all. Let me get some more of this heavenly incense going on as I bring out the information. But now, let's frankincense some myrrh, and I think this is baby powder, and it went out on me. Sorry about that, you all. And I'm not promoting setting anything on fire. I'm just lighting my incense. You know, this world is crazy today, so you got to say all of these things so you don't get in trouble. All right, so now we're ready to rock and roll. Alexandrian, the Jew, a generation was 40 years. Not 2,000 years, not an infinite amount of time, but 40 years. So when Christ said, and I quote, talking to the people in front of him, fill up ye the, sorry, no, not that part. Verse 36, 23, Matthew 23, 36. Verily I say unto you, he's talking to the scribes and Pharisees, all these things, he just said judgment, shall come upon this generation. So Christ was giving his judgment, that destruction, 40 years to come up on those Pharisees and Sadducees, those Israelites, right? So once you go back to the commentary of Habakkuk, it says, this passage refers to the traitors with the man of the lie, because they have not obeyed the words of the teacher of righteousness. That would be the Messiah, the Christ, the words of the teacher of righteousness. If you guys don't know the words of the teacher of the righteousness, all you got to do is search Matthew chapter 5. Started at verse 1, go all the way down to 16. Blessed is the poor in spirit. Blessed are they that mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those that do hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the peace of heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those that are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Blessed are the men that revile you and persecute you, for this, and shall say in all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. The city is set on the hill. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel. Let your light so shine before men that ye may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Those are the words of the Messiah. Those are the words of the teacher of righteousness. And notice he was trying to explain to them righteous stuff. Be a peacemaker, right? Thirst and hunger for righteousness, not for food, but for righteousness, right? Be poor in spirit, be humble, don't be arrogant, don't be prideful, don't be proud. This is the message that the teacher of righteousness brought to the first century Israelites, and they were not hearing it at all. But here we have the commentary of Habakkuk. When they were speaking on the things of the last days, they said the cruel Israelites who will not believe when they hear everything that is to come upon that latter generation, which John the Baptist spoke of, Christ spoke of, the disciples spoke of, Paul spoke of, that will be spoken by the priest. That was Christ. We read what the priest said. And whose heart, which is the mind, God has put the ability to explain all the words of his servants, the prophets, through whom God has foretold everything that come upon his people and the Gentiles. Now, once again, we got Christ explaining all the things that all the things that the prophets had said earlier. So this is how Christ explained it, right? Let's go to Matthew. Let's see here. Give me one sec. So many things I can go through. I think it's Matthew 10. Hold on, let's see here. I guess it'd be easier just to do this. And how far I was off? Very far. Matthew 22. Matthew 22 says, is it 22? 22:37. Well, 36. Master, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So according to Christ, he went through and he told the man that was speaking to him, that all the law and the prophets hung upon two commandments. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. What did it say here about the commentary? They will hear everything. They are the cruel Israelites who will not believe when they hear everything that is come upon the latter generation that will be spoken of by the priests, in whose heart God has put the ability to explain all the words of his servants, the prophets, through whom God has foretold everything that is come upon his people and the Gentiles. So he's explaining now that the law and the prophets, the point behind those was the love for the Father and the love for your neighbor, right? So that's one way. You can go to Luke 24. Another one was Luke 24, and I'm just going to read 44 and 45. And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which was written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me. Then opened he their understanding that they might understand the scriptures. That's when he was talking to the disciples. What did it say in the Habakkuk commentary? when they had a generation which was spoken of by the priest, in whose mind God had put the ability to explain all the words of his servants, the prophets, through whom God had foretold everything that is to come upon his people and the Gentiles. So I have proven that this has to be the Messiah. The Messiah was the one expounding scriptures and telling them what the law and the prophets was all about. So here's a side note, just a side note. If you guys are reading the Bible, right, and you're trying to get an understanding from the Bible, if it's so confusing to you and you don't know which way to go, left or right, Christ told us that the law and the prophets, that is the Torah and the Tanakh, from Genesis all the way up into Malachi, the law and the prophets was about loving the Father, what your all inward being, and loving your neighbor. So if you don't get nothing that the Bible is talking about, it's about love for your God and for the community. That's what it's about. So anybody come to you, the Bible is fake, the Bible is false, God is not doing blah, blah, this and that. They missed the point. The point, where is God right now? Why is all blah, blah, blah? If you follow it, you will be okay. But now, I'm going to read the next one in the commentary of Habakkuk. Then I'm going to move on. It says, the coming of the Romans, their cruelty and military prowess was already legendary. And we're going to prove that. For I am now about to raise up the Chaldeans, that brutal and reckless people. If you know anything about the Chaldeans, these were the Babylonians, right? That King Nebuchadnezzar ruled over, and etc. So these Chaldeans were the Babylonians. But look, this is their commentary. This is what they said. This refers to the Kittim. So notice it said one word, which was Babylonians, but they said, yeah, but in the last days, this passage is about the Kittims, the Romans. Now, for my people who don't understand, the New Testament was penned under Roman rulership. Let me say it again. Rome was in rulership during the time of the New Testament. So what the commentary of Habakkuk is saying is the things that I'm speaking on is going to be the time when Rome is in play, when Rome is coming to rule, when Rome is going to be in authority. So it has to be around the New Testament because that's when Rome was in authority. Biblical Rome. I'm not going to do the play with America's Rome and we're in a democracy or we following Rome. No, we're not going to do all that. America's America. Biblical Rome is biblical Rome. So now, this refers to the Kittim, who are swift and mighty in war. We're going to prove this. Annihilating many people and ... in the authority of the Kittim and the wicked ... which would have to be priests, and have no faith in the laws of God. They range across the land to seize dwellings not their own. They take people's lands. This refers to Kittim, Rome ... and they cross the plain, attacking and pillaging the cities of the land. For that is what it means when it says to seize dwellings not their own. Dire and dreadful they are. Their law and their flame come from themselves alone. This referred to Kittim, the fear and dread of who are on all nations. By intention, their only thought is to do evil and deceit and trickery. They conduct themselves with all the people. Swifter than panther, than horses, faster than desert wolves. Their horses, galloping, spreading out from afar. They fly like a vulture, intent on food, all of them bent on violence, their faces ever forward. This refers to Kittim, who trample the land with their horses and with their beasts. From far away, they come from the seacoast to eat up all the people, like an insatiable vulture, in anger and hostility, and in wrath and arrogance. They speak with all the people, for that is what it means when it says, their faces ever forward. They will gather captives like sand. This refers to ... at kings. They mock potentates, they laugh to scorn. This means that they sneer at many people and deride the nobility. They jeer at kings and princes and ridicule a throng of people. They laugh at every fortress. They pile up dirt and capture it. This refers to the rulers of the kingdom, Rome, who derived the fortresses of the people, and with a sneer laugh at them. With a great army they surround them to capture them, and with fear and terror the fortresses fall into their people who dwell there. So now, they put this during the time of Rome, Roman conquest, and they're explaining all of the characteristics of Rome. And they put this in the same time period of the last days, in the same time period when the teacher of righteousness would be speaking to the cruel Israelites, and the wicked priests would not believe them along with the cruel Israelites. They would not believe this teacher of righteousness. We find it being portrayed in the New Testament under Christ. But notice also how these individuals that lived in the BC era, once again, this is before the AD era, before Christ, and I forgot what the AD stands for, after something, but it's like the beginning of the new countdown. So the BC counted down, AD counts up. So, the BC was like 1,000, 900, 800, 700, 600, 500, 400, 300, 200, 100. Then it goes down to 1 BCE. Then when we turn over to the AD, it starts counting up. 1 AD, 2 AD, 3 AD, 1400, 1500, all the way to what we got now, 2021. So the BC counted down, AD counts up. So this is what we have going on here. These people lived in the BC era, counting down about what was going to happen in the AD era, which is counting up. So they saying that this was a future prophecy about the last days. So the Habakkuk, the commentary Habakkuk left by the Jews in the BC era, they said the last days was going to be dealing with Kittim coming in with a strong army, and the teacher of righteousness being on the scene during the same time, speaking to the Israelites and being not believed. Okay, so now that's the Dead Sea Scrolls. We can close it. We don't need it no more. Order this book online. It's on Amazon. I got it. Dead Sea Scroll. See it right there? It's a new translation, translated with the commentary by Michael Wise, Martin Ebeb, and Edward Cook. I think I got this for like $8 on Amazon. I got the used version, so wash your hands when you get it, if you're going to get it. Okay, so now, let's go to the War of the Jews with Josephus, right? Y'all know my doctrine killer, Josephus. I call him the doctrine killer because when people come with all that futurism stuff, I go into the war, which is the history, and say, no, the things that you're saying in the future actually happened in the past. And the reason why you don't know is because you don't know the past. You don't know your history. Therefore, to you, it never happened. So he kills a lot of doctrines out today because he actually tells us the history. And now, if you can't find it in history, then we can talk. But the things you're saying, we can usually find in history. So we're going to go to War of the Jews, Book 2, Chapter 16. Section 4, lines 361 through 363. I got it marked, as you can tell, right here. I don't know if you can see the page number, but I'm on page 745. My Josephus, Antiquity of the Jews. It didn't have a rough life. But anyway, so now, let me read 361. This is what it says. Moreover, 10,000 other nations there are who had greater reasons than we to claim their entire liberty and yet do submit. So let me give you the background. This is Josephus speaking to his fellow Jews during Rome coming in to siege Jerusalem. So this is that last stance. This is around the last stance that that the Jews was given. So you have Josephus speaking to those Jews about the kingdom, about Rome. So notice how this Jew, first century Jew, he was also a priest, also a Pharisee, very noble in birth, smart in class. This is what he said. Moreover, 10,000 other nations that are who had greater reason than we to claim their entire liberty, and yet do submit. Ye are the only people who think it a disgrace to be servants to those to whom all the world had submitted. What sort are you? Now, notice how they say all the world, because I know when you guys in the 21st century in the Western world, when you're in the Bible and you read the words world, all the world, you be thinking about every single being on the planet Earth. Meanwhile, if you read the history of the ancient Israelites, the world would have been the world that they knew. They didn't know anything about North America. They didn't know anything about Antarctica. They're not talking about us over here. They're not talking about this hemisphere. They was talking about the things that they knew about, the world that they knew about. And if you go to Acts 2, it actually explains all of those places in the world that they knew about. It's not talking about us over here. But anyway, you are the only people think it a disgrace to be servants to those whom all the world had submitted. What sort of army do you rely on? What are the arms you depend on? Where is your fleet that you may seize upon the Roman seas? So now they're talking about he's talking about Rome. And where are those treasures which may be sufficient for your undertakings? Do you suppose, I pray you, that you are to make war with the Egyptians and with the Arabians? Will you not carefully reflect upon the Roman Empire? Will you not estimate your own weakness? Have not your army been often beaten even by your neighboring nations? While the power of the Romans is invincible in all parts of the habitable earth. Notice it said habitable earth. That's the earth that they knew that was inhabited. They're not over here. They wasn't over here in the first century in the Americas talking about this is Rome property. No, they didn't do that. That's not us. But I'm going to read the next one, then I'll be done. Nay, rather, they seek for somewhat still beyond it, for all Euphrates is not a sufficient boundary for them on the east side, nor the Danube on the north, and for their southern limit. Libya has also searched over by them, has been searched over by them. As for its countries uninhabited, as in Cadiz, their limit on the west. Nay, indeed, they have sought for another habitable earth beyond the ocean, and have carried their arms as far as such as British islands, as was never known before. And you keep reading, they never say anything about America. But notice how Josephus said the Romans were invincible in all parts of the earth. Notice Habakkuk said that this strong army was going to come in and take over and destroy. Now we have during the time of Christ, according to Josephus, who lived during the time of Christ, a contemporary of Christ, he said that same Roman Empire was invincible. So now let's see how Daniel explained this Roman Empire. This is how Daniel explained it. He didn't call it the Roman Empire, but he gave us clues if you know eschatology. This is what he said about that fourth beast. That fourth beast was the Roman Empire, the same Roman Empire that Christ lived under, the same Roman Empire that the commentary of Habakkuk was about, the same Roman Empire that Josephus spoke about. So let's see how Daniel the prophet spoke about him. Daniel 7:7. And this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, that will be the Roman Empire, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth. It stamped and devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. So according to Daniel, that beast was so strong. And it had iron, which lets you know a little bit about the Iron Age and their weaponry. But now we're going to go to Antiquity of the Jews, Book 10, chapter 11, section 7, on page 2. Hold on. line 276 on page 341. I got a lot of markers on here, so I can't take my markers out. Take my markers out. You know what I'm saying? That's it right there. 341. You see, I'm marked up, right? Listen to what Josephus said. I'm going to read line 276. It says, "And indeed it came to pass that I offered these things under Antiochus Epiphanes, according to Daniel's visions." We just read Daniel. "And what he wrote many years before they came to pass. In the very same manner, Daniel also wrote concerning the Roman government, and that our country should be made desolate by them. All these things did this man leave in writing, as God had showed them to him, insomuch that such as read his prophecies and see how they have been fulfilled would wonder at the underwear with God under Daniel." So according to Josephus, when he was speaking on Daniel, he said Daniel wrote concerning the Roman government and how the country should be, that means destroyed, made desolate by them. So you have Daniel speaking on the Roman Empire. You have it right there. So we got the time period, we got the empire, we got the world power at that time, which would have been the Romans, the kingdom. So now let's connect this to the Messiah. We're going to go to the 12 patriarchs now, right? The 12 patriarchs, and we're going to go into the testament of Naphtali. 12 patriarchs, the testament of Naphtali. And let's see what Naphtali had to say about this coming Messiah. We're going to start at line 7. "And lo, my children, I have shown unto you the last time." So if you don't know what's going on, these are the 12 patriarchs, the sons of Jacob. You know, Jacob gave his last prophecies. So now his last end day prophecy in Genesis 49. So according to some of the legends found by Israel, his 12 sons did the same thing right before they got ready to die. So this is what Naphtali left as a record for his descendants. "And lo, my children, I have shown unto you the last times," which is the last days, "how everything should come to pass in Israel. Do ye also therefore," well, let me show you, make sure that I'm showing that I'm reading. See that? See that? So, "And lo, my children, I have shown unto you the last times how everything should come to pass in Israel. Do ye also therefore charge your children that they be united to Levi and to Judah." So you got the priest and the kings. "For through them shall salvation arise unto Israel." So Levi, to me, that would be John the Baptist. Judah would be Christ. "For through them shall salvation arise unto Israel, and in them shall Jacob be blessed. For through their tribes shall God," now listen to what it says, "and for through their tribes shall God appear, dwelling among men on earth, to save the race of Israel." So this is be the patriarchs, the testaments of the 12 patriarchs, okay? This would have been found in the BC era. This would have, let me see if I can find it real fast before I continue. Their infamy is painted in lucid colors by contemporary writers of the 1st century BC. The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs was written in Hebrew in the later years of John Hyrcanus, in all probability after his final victory over the Syrian power and before his breach with the Pharisees. In other words, between 109 and 106 BC. Their author was a Pharisee who combined loyalty to the best traditions of his party and the most unbound admiration of Hyrcanus. So, we got, let's see here. After the first century of our era, the fortunes of the Testament speedily declined in Christendom. So now, you got the 1st century. Hey, how you doing? How you doing, sweetie? Thank you for listening in. But you got the first century BC. So this is before Christ came on the earth. This is before the Christians came about. So you can't make this a Christian document. You can't say that the Christians are lying and they created this. This is BC era. So this is before Christianity. So this is what they said. For through the tribe shall God appear, dwelling among men on earth to save the race of Israel. So if you guys don't understand what's being said there, this is when you go to John 1:1. For you people, how is Christ God? God is God. Christ is Christ. No, Christ isn't God. You know how you guys do all that because you don't know what the Israelites believed. You think Israel was monotheistic and they was actually polytheistic, but you guys want to make them be monotheistic because Christ gave all of power and authority to his God and said, don't worship me, worship my God. But he still was a God regardless. So let me read John 1 to you. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. These are two individuals. In the beginning was the Word was with God. So you got the Word being with God. Okay, so let me just show you. Let me see if I can show you two examples. Okay, this is the Word. This is God. Sorry about that, y'all, but this is what I got around me right now. So you got the Word, you got God. So let me show you how this works. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So you got two individuals, right? The same in the beginning with God. So they're together. All things were made by him. By who? God? No. All things were made by the Word. Let me see. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything that was made. So you got Christ being the creator God. Now, Christ is in subjection to his Father, who is his God. So even though Christ was the creator, he has a God over him. So even though Christ created the planet Earth and all of the planets and all of the people on the planet, even though Christ created all of that, he still has a God who is his Father above him. I know you guys are taught that God, the Father, created everything. No, Christ created everything. And he put everything in subjection. Well, he made everything in subjection to his Father. That's the problem. We can never get to the Father because we were sinful. So Christ, the Son, who was another God, came on the scene to show us how to get to his Father because we couldn't get it off our own accolades. So we had to use Christ, and Christ showed us how to get to him. But anyway, and the light shined in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The same came for a witness to bear witness to the light, that all men might through him might believe. He was not that light, but sent to bear witness of the light. That was the true light, which lighted every man that cometh to the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him. Let me say it again. He was in the world, the Word, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came into his own, which was the Jews. His own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, which would be the light, and the glory of the as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So the God that came on the earth, that Yahweh that you guys are talking about is the Father, there will actually be Christ. So now let's go back through it. I'm going to read it all straight through now and not stop. And lo, my children, I have shown unto you the last times how everything should come to pass in Israel. Do ye also therefore charge your children that they might be united to Levi and to Judah? For through them shall salvation arise unto Israel, and in them shall Jacob be blessed. For through their tribe shall God appear, dwelling among men on earth. to save the race of Israel, and to gather together the righteous from amongst the Gentiles. We see that in the book of Amos. If ye, let me go there real fast. He should gather Israel, save Israel, and gather the Gentiles, right? There was a prophecy in Amos, and we find it actually being fulfilled in Acts. You go to Amos 9:11. In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen and close up the breaches thereof. So that would be him saving Israel. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as the days of the old. And that they may possess the remnant of Edom and of all the heathen, that's the Gentiles, which also called by my name, said the Lord to do this. And you go to Acts 15. Acts 15, 14 through 17. Simeon has declared how God at first did visit the Gentiles to take out them a people for his name, and to disagree the words of the prophet as is written. After this I will return and will build up again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up, that the residue of men might seek after the Lord, and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, said the Lord, who doth all these things. So according to Acts, that prophecy was fulfilled in 1st century, the same time period that Christ and the disciples lived. So now, and together the righteous from among the Gentiles, them are the ones called by his name. If ye work that which is good, my children, both men and angels shall bless you. And God shall be glorified among the Gentiles through you. And the devil shall flee from you. And the wild beast shall fear you. And the Lord shall love you. And the angels shall cleave to you. As a man who has trained a child well is kept in kindly remembrance, so also for a good work there is a good remembrance before God. But him who doeth not that which is good, both angels and men should curse. And God shall be dishonored among the Gentiles through him. And the devil shall make him his own peculiar instrument. And every wild beast shall master him. And the Lord shall hate him. For the commandments of the law are twofold, and through prudence must they be fulfilled. So the commandments of the law are twofold. So when you're reading the law, there's two things you can get from it. You can get the literal aspect, you get the spiritual aspect. The spiritual is the one that connects us to the Father, and the literal, let's see what this says. Okay, and the literal does not. So now it says, for there is a season for a man to embrace his wife, and a season to abstain therefrom for his prayers. So in other words, they're saying there's a season for a man to be with his wife, and then there's a season for a man to be away from his wife so he can go through prayers to the Lord. Because we know that the way when a man prays to the Lord, he's not supposed to be in the company of his wife or anything that can be a distraction from him to the Lord. So now, in 9. So then there are 2 commandments, and unless they be done in due order, they bring very great sin upon men. So also it is with the other commandments. Be ye therefore wise in God, my children, and prudent, understanding the order of his commandments and the laws of every word, that the Lord may love you. So there's 2 commandments, right? You go to 1 John 3, verse 22. And whatsoever we ask, we receive of him. Now notice the Patriarchs, right, was created before the New Testament. The Patriarchs was created before the New Testament. So I read what the first thing first, BC era. So now I'm going to read what came hundreds of years later, which was AD, to show you how they go together. They're not separate. They go together. One is a prophecy. The other is the fulfillment or the explanation of the prophecy. And whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do the things that are pleasing in his sight. Notice the patriarch Naphtali said there's 2 commandments. So now let's see. And this is his commandment, that we should believe on the name of his son, Jesus Christ, and love one another as he gave us commandments. We got at 2 commandments again. What are we supposed to be doing today? Are we supposed to be doing the 10 commandments? Not today. That's not our covenant. The 10 commandment isn't our covenant now. So the people are like, well, if we're not supposed to be doing the 10 commandments, you telling me it's okay to kill? It's okay to steal. It's okay to commit adultery. It's okay to covet. It's okay to not honor your father and mother. It's okay not to love the Lord. It's okay not to do all that since we're not under those commandments. Listen to the commandments we got to do. And this is his commandment, that we should believe on the name of his son, Jesus Christ. So if you believe on the name of the son, if you believe on the authority of Christ, because that's what that name means in ancient Israelite terms, if you believe on the authority of Christ, then you will live the life that Christ told you to live in Matthew chapter 5. So if you live that life, then you can't be out here coveting, creating murder, not dishonoring your father and mother, and not loving the Lord if you believe on Christ. Now, this is the second one. And love one another as he gave us commandments. If you love one another, how are you doing anything that hurt each other? How are you killing? If I love my brother, why am I killing my brother? If I love my brother, why am I stealing from my brother? If I love my brother, why am I trying to have sex with his wife? If I love my brother, why am I trying to show hatred toward him? Get it, understand it. Now, and he that keepeth his commandments and dwelleth him, and he in him, and hereby we know that he abideth in us by the Spirit which he had given us. So now, notice, first century Messiah, right? The Messiah was supposed to come on earth. That's what I went here first. For all the tribes, through their tribes, Levi and Judah, through their tribes, shall God appear dwelling among men on earth. And we read in John, the word was made flesh, and he tabernacled with us. It says the tribes, God would appear dwelling among men. He tabernacled with us. So this is talking about the same time period. So the Messiah, the God-man that they was waiting to come, according to our Bible, he came first century. So now, let's keep going on. Let's show a little bit more, all right? Let's go to Isaiah 42. And they'll see a lot of people, they don't teach you this Old Testament, New Testament stuff. They tell you, let's go in the New Testament and let's leave it, because they don't understand the promises of the Old Testament. And they can't get the full story. If you don't get the full story, how can you get the full spirit? So now, Isaiah 42, we're just going to read 1 through 4. Behold, my servant whom I uphold, mine elect, in whom my soul delighted. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. A bruised reed shall he not break, and the smoking flax shall he not quench. He shall bring forth judgment unto truth. So that means he's going to be peaceful. He's not going to take things out of create chaos, take things out of their natural order, but he's going to expound upon it. Anyway, verse 4, he shall not fail nor be discouraged till he have set judgment in the earth. The planet earth? No, the habitable earth that they knew about. Till he had set judgment in the earth, and the isles, that will be the isles of the Gentiles, shall wait for his law. That's a new covenant promise. So then, once you go to Matthew 12, we're going to read 9 all the way down to 21. Listen to what it says. And when he departed, this will be Christ, he went into their synagogue. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? That they might accuse him? And he said unto them, what man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold of it and lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days. Then said he to the man, stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole like the other. Then the Pharisees went out and held a council against him, how they might destroy him. But when Jesus knew it, he withdrew himself from thence, and the great multitudes followed him, and he healed them all. So that's him putting judgment on the Gentiles. He's healing them from their sins. And look, and charged them that they should not make him known, that it might be fulfilled, which is spoken of by Isaiah the prophet, saying, behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he shall show judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not strive, nor cry, neither shall any man hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed shall he not break, and a smoking flax shall he not quench, till he send forth judgment into victory, and in his name shall the Gentiles trust. So we see it right there that the Messiah was supposed to bring judgment into the Gentiles. He wasn't. He was supposed to save his children of Israel, his people of Israel. He was going to save. And in the middle of giving them that salvation, in the same ministry, he was going to take to the Gentiles, and he was going to actually have them being called under his name. He was going to actually gather the Gentiles into him, not save them, but gather them. He's saving Israel. He's gathering the Gentiles. So now let's go to Isaiah 49, and let's show you a different one. Isaiah 49, we're going to read 5 and 6. And now, said the Lord, that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Does Israel be not gathered? Yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, and my God shall be my strength. And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the ends of the earth. So once again, we have it again in Isaiah. It's a light thing for you just to save Israel. I'm going to make sure I'm going to give you the Gentiles too. So you're going to be an inheritor of the Gentiles. It's a light thing for you to only get Israel. I'm going to give you an even bigger mission. You're going to go out and save the Gentiles. So this was a Messianic prophecy. So when was this Messianic prophecy said to be fulfilled? Now, we didn't read how all of these things, the teacher of righteousness was going to come. He was going to bring truth to the people, but the cruel Israelites wasn't going to believe him. We have read that all of this was going to happen during the time that Kittim was coming in power, and Kittim was in power. So we didn't already set the tone that Rome was in power during the same time period that Christ lived. Okay, we didn't set that tone. So now we're trying to show how the Messiah was how he was living in the first century, bringing that truth to or prophesied to bring that truth to Israel as well as the Gentiles, to make it all go together. So now we're going to go to Luke 2, and listen what it says in Luke 2 now. Luke 2. We're going to start at 25. We're going to read down to 32. Luke 2:25. And behold, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and the same man was just and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel. And the Holy Ghost was upon him, or the Holy Spirit, and it was revealed unto him by the Holy Spirit, that he should not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came by the Spirit into the temple. And when the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him after the custom of the law, which was the circumcision, then took he up in his arms and blessed God and said, Lord, now lettest thou servant depart in peace, according to thy word. For mine eyes have seen thou salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles and the glory of thy people Israel. So that was the fulfillment of what Isaiah 49 spoke of, to show you that the Messiah who lived in the first century, who they said was Jesus the Christ, born during the Roman Empire, he was on the scene during that Roman Empire time period. So now we have him going to not only Israel, but also the Gentiles. So now let's go to War of the Jews. I'm going to read War of the Jews, book 3, and I'm about to wrap it up. War of the Jews, book 3, chapter 3, section 2. We're going to read 41 through 46. Sorry, chapter 3. War of the Jews, chapter 3, book 3, section 2, lines 41 through 42, which is found on page 7068. Right there. Sorry about this cord. This is my headphones. If you're looking on, wondering why I got this cord on here. So now, this is what it says. These two Galilees of so great largeness and encompassed with so many nations of foreigners have always been able to make a strong resistance on all occasions of war. For the Galileans are inured to war from their infancy and have been always very numerous, nor hath the country been ever destitute of men of courage or wanted a numerous set of them, for their soil is universally rich and fruitful, and full of plantations of trees and of all sorts, insomuch that it invites the most slothful to take pains in its cultivation by its fruitfulness. So now you have the Galileans, right? Those in Galilees, it was two Galilees, Upper Galilee, Lower Galilee, right? And inside of this territory, there was many nations of foreigners. Now, why would I bring that up? You go to Matthew 4. I'm going to read 12 through 17. And leaving Nazareth, hold on, no, 12, sorry. Now, when Jesus had heard that John was cast into prison, he departed into Galilee. What was in Galilee? Many foreign nations. Don't forget, Josephus lived in the same time period that Christ lived. So it wasn't a whole group of people left. Many foreign nations was in Galilee. Now, when Jesus had heard that John was cast into prison, he departed into Galilee. And leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the sea coast, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali, which is Zebulun and Naphtali, and that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of by Isaiah the prophet, saying, the land by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people which sat in darkness saw great light, which is what we read in John, which is also a resurrection motif, from darkness to light. And to them which sat in the region and shadow of death, light is sprung. Oh, sorry. Let me read it again. Sorry. The people which sat in darkness saw great light, and to them which sat in the region and shadow of death, light is sprung up. From that time Jesus began to preach and to say, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And that is a resurrection motif. I know people want bodies to be coming out of the ground, but the resurrection motif is from light, from darkness to light. And he actually called it the shadow of death, which was them being without Christ, them being without the Father, until Christ coming down, showing them how to obtain him and the Father. So they went from darkness to light, which is resurrection motif. But he brought that to Galilee, which had a lot of foreigners, right? And so now, this will be my last one from Josephus. I'm going to read War of the Jews, book 4, chapter 3, section 10, page 806. I'm finna teach y'all a little something real fast. Let me get it right here. Book 806. I'm gonna teach y'all something real fast. I'm gonna start at 180, line 182, and read down to line 184. This is what it says. To see those Romans never going beyond the bounds allotted to profane persons, nor venturing to break in upon any of our sacred customs, nay, having horror on their minds when they view at a distance those sacred walls, while some that have been born in this very country and brought up in our customs and called Jews do walk about in the midst of the holy places at that very time when their hands are still warm with the slaughter of their own countrymen. Besides, can anyone be afraid of a war abroad, and that with such have had comparatively much great moderation than our own people have? For truly, if we suit our words to the things they represent, it is probable one may hereafter find that the Romans to be supporters of our laws, and those within ourselves the subverters of them. So, I read that because we can clearly see from Josephus, the historian, first century Jew, the priest, intelligent person, royal descent, nobility, right? He was saying in the first century that the Jews were not only Jews anymore. Now anybody who practiced the customs was considered a Jew. So even the Romans, by national birth, the Kidams, was considered Jews. Now, why would I bring that out? Let's go to Romans 3, 28 through 30. Therefore, we can, hold on, Romans 3, 28 through 30, yeah. Therefore, we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Is he the God of the Jews only? Is he not also of the Gentiles? Yes, of the Gentiles also, seeing it is one God which shall justify the circumcision by faith and the uncircumcision through faith. So I also want to show you one more. We're going to go to Romans 2, 28 through 30. For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh. But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly. And the circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, who praises not of men, but of God. Sorry, that was 28 and 29. There's no 30. So, you have right there that Paul was making the declaration that a Jew is a person that was a Jew inwardly, who had an inward circumcision of the mind, and not one outwardly who had an outwardly circumcision of his manhood. So I have demonstrated through Habakkuk, the commentary Habakkuk, Josephus, the War of the Jews, Antiquity of the Jews, the 12 Patriarchs, that it was thought that the time period that the Messiah came, or the teacher of righteousness was going to come, was going to be in the last days. And in those last days, there was going to be a strong army who had a presence in the same territory that the teacher of righteousness was in. And not only that, but there was going to be a wicked priest around, and cruel Israelites around also. In the same generation, in the same last days, because they all considered this to occur during the last days. Habakkuk, the commentary Habakkuk, said this was going to happen in the last days when the teacher of righteousness came and the wicked Israelites didn't believe him, and etc. You got the Testament of Naphtali said that these things was going to happen in the last days when ones from the tribe of Levi and Judah was going to bring a righteousness to the people, and God was going to come on earth and dwell with the people. Happened first century. We also got the prophecies that there was going to be a servant that was going to restore Israel, save Israel, and gather Gentiles. We find that being spoken of under the Roman Empire by Christ. So by default, the first century had to be the last days, and it had to be what the Bible was speaking on, dealing with prophecy. And I can conclude it with two more, and then we can end the night. And this is how we know. Once you go to Hebrews chapter 1, this is what the author of Hebrews said. Hebrews 1 and 2. Sorry. God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in time past unto the Father by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the world. So according to the writer of Hebrews, they lived in the last days, which was the first century, which was the same generation Christ and the disciples lived in. We can't get around it, right? And according to Christ, Matthew 16, 27 to 28. For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and he shall reward every man according to his works. That's the great white throne judgment right there. That's the judgment of all. Verily I say unto you, he's talking to his disciples, that's verse 24. There be some standing here, which was right there in front of him, which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man, which is Christ, coming in his kingdom. So please share the video. That just prove that the end, the time of the end was first century. We live in the 21st century, so that was 20 centuries ago. The first century BC Jews knew the Messiah was going to come during the time of Kittim, Rome, and then that was going to be the last days. And during that last days, the cruel Israelites would not believe all of the words that he said. That's the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls put the last days during the time of Christ. 12 patriarchs said that during the tribes of Judah and Levi was going to be the ones to bring reconciliation for Israel, as well as gather the Gentiles. And during that time period, God was going to dwell with man on earth. That happened first century during Christ's time. Christ was that man. His name, he was called Emmanuel, which means God with us. So we have it here. You got Josephus saying that the Roman Empire was the strongest empire ever. It was strong, invincible. Same thing Dead Sea Scrolls said about this strong empire coming. Daniel agreed with Josephus said. Josephus said Daniel actually wrote about the Roman Empire. What else did Josephus talk about? Josephus told us that there was foreigners in Galilee. And he also told us that foreigners or Romans start being called Jews also. And then we went through Philo. And what Philo did, he showed us that a generation was 40 years. And so anytime that Christ says this generation shall not pass, he's talking about a 40-year time period, not a 2,000-year time period. And we got the Bible, which actually expounded on all of the Messianic prophecies. And we have the New Testament author saying Christ fulfilled all of the Messianic prophecies that were supposed to occur during the end days. The book of Hebrews tells us when the end days was also, or the last days, which was first century, as well as Christ told us, told the disciples that his second coming with his kingdom, with the reward, with his judgment was going to be before all of them died. So all of this information put together shows how the ancient Israelites viewed the Messiah in the last days. And they let us know when the last days was. Us not being in the last days no more, we're in the kingdom now. We're in the new covenant, everlasting kingdom. It doesn't have a last days. If it's an everlasting kingdom, it can't be a last day because it never ends. So we're in the last days now. So we're not worrying about Christ coming. We're not worrying about judgment. We're not worried about the sky parting. We're not being lost in the imagery of the stars falling from heaven and the earth shaking or the sky quaking. I don't even know what a sky quake looked like, but the sky quaking and locusts coming up out of the ground and dragons from the sky and all of that imagery that was teaching a different story that we take literal today. So what are we supposed to be doing? Matthew chapter 5, Matthew 25. As well as 1 John 3. Believing on Christ, loving your neighbor, being productive in your community, which is loving your neighbor. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Anything else does not matter. So, this is F in Israel from the Assembly of Sound Doctrine Chandler, AOSD-Chandler. I'm on YouTube. I will have a new Facebook coming under the Assembly of Sound Doctrine, as well as you can look at, you can search RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom, RPK dash Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom, where those three tenets, I believe, is the one that you need to use in order to understand the Bible. That's also on YouTube. I'm one of the instructors of RPK. You can also look at my mentors channel, All Things Fulfilled by Mr. William Bell. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. It is late now. It's going to be 2 o'clock. I got to get some sleep. But thank you all for listening in. Thank you, Quit, for listening in, as well as everybody else that's going to view this in the future on my Facebook and YouTube channel. Please share, like, subscribe, tell everybody the good news of everything being fulfilled. So now, let me get ready to take us out on a outro like AOSD does.
Thank you for clicking on the channel. Similar Sound Doctrine Chandler. Similar Sound Doctrine. AOSD, RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy. Like, subscribe, share. Let's go. Come get a lesson. I'm teaching blessings. No need for guessing. I'm not testing. It's truth time. The lies will shine. And the wicked will pine. I'm a righteous mind. As trouble of people that settle just me and my brothers, the session they love us, we're fixing the person that's blessing. I come to the book and the struggle will answer the guns. Want to read it, believe it. It should be back, read it, they need it. Like get back, preachers and pieces. Like a get got Aki's and I get seasoned. Hollywood, not Dollywood. Album love, beginning with me. AOSD is for missing. RPK, let you get everything. It's a Hollywood, not Dollywood. Album love, beginning within. AOSD is for missing. RPK, let you get everything. Sound Doctor.